Podcast with your hosts, Jason Balin and Ian Horowitz.
Ian, what's up, buddy?
What's up, brother?
Not too much. Damn, I completely forgot to take this this little banner off the below when during the intro video. But we're not professional podcasters, so what does it matter?
You gave away all the secrets for the episode.
Yeah, something like that. I didn't give away anything. This is all ad-libbed anyways, man. There's no scripting in our podcast.
And there is definitely no scripting.
Hey, you want to do a podcast? Yeah, let's do a podcast. You do a podcast. That's what makes it great. And dude, we got some big named guests coming up here soon, which I'm excited about as well. You know, it's always good to get some good folks kind of on here, especially outside just the real estate investing industry. You know, if they're an entrepreneur, marketer, or business owner, just kind of a good, successful person in general. It makes it great to have them on.
Yeah, 100%. And, you know, it's something we've been talking about bringing on. You know, we're always trying to bring new content, what's relevant to who and what we are. And there's been a lot of discussions on, you know, expanding our podcast, not only just from the day-to-day real estate, but more mental and mind stuff and headspace stuff. And actually, this topic that we're about to talk to kind of relates to that. And it's funny, I was out at a conference at a mastermind in Phoenix, and I literally talked about this topic in a similar fashion. We got a little deeper on a case study, but you know, it's something that's very important. I've heard a few other people talking about it recently, and it's gonna be interesting to see where our podcast goes, right? Like, because Jason literally texted me, he's like, "Hey, we need to do a podcast." I said, "Okay, here we are, we're live, and this is what we're gonna talk about." And I want to see what comes out of me off the cuff, because it is a very, very important topic, and I have a feeling our 10-minute podcast is going to turn into a 45-minute podcast. So sit back and enjoy.
Yes. So today we're going to focus kind of on some case studies related to stepping back and focusing on the importance of a deal structure. And let's kind of start from the beginning of how to do this, because we all run into this problem. I mean, think about this. We're all looking on a daily basis. This is like, there's challenges that happen every day inside all of our businesses, right? You could be in real estate, you might not be, but think about this. You know, you're trying to figure out how to creatively structure a deal. Potentially, you have to have a hard conversation with a seller or a buyer or a capital investor. Maybe you have to hire or fire an employee. Whatever it is, right? You know, there's lots of things that we're challenges that we're constantly going through kind of on a daily basis inside of our businesses. And a lot of us, just because we're entrepreneurs, a lot of us are D personality types, or maybe we have some I in us. We just think with our instincts, right? So it's like, whatever comes to us right now, let's just go with that. And that's okay. I think the reason that a lot of us are successful is because we think with instincts, and we act on our instincts. It's a good kind of natural way to do it. But sometimes it doesn't work like that. It's something that's a lot more sophisticated. You need a lot more kind of creative juices in it. I know kind of in the past that there's opportunities that, you know, we've acted on that we could have just stuck to our normal business model and say, hey, you know what, let's just do a regular loan for this client, and just keep it simple, move on to the next one. Or maybe we can get more creative on the deal, do some sort of joint venture participation, maybe some debt equity play, whatever it is. I'm just using this as an example, and I have a lot of other examples we're going to go through here in a second. But just by kind of spending that extra time going through different things, potentially you can make a lot more money on that. You know, imagine, you know, doing some sort of partnership with a buyer for your wholesale deal, right? So just selling your wholesale deal to somebody, maybe you say, you know what, instead of me making a $10,000 fee, maybe I can do a joint venture. Maybe I can sell to them at no wholesale fee and then collect a bigger fee on the back end, right? Like, there's tons and tons of different ways to do that as a deal structure. But the important part is for all of us to kind of identify, let's start from the beginning, like identify what we want to all focus on, right? And obsess with that first.
So here's a legit question. And Pete, I'm podcasting right now, so you can't call me.
Yeah,
so
hop on, ask Pete. You're going to benefit from this as well. I know you will. So hop on right now.
He's
hop
normally
on.
our number one fan, but no, seriously, like, yeah, it's, we both listened to someone recently. They brought up a really good point. I think a lot of people concentrate on the deal structure more than they do the actual deal. I think step number one out of all this, if you were going through this and you're looking at a deal, it's not so much the structure of the deal that is the utmost importance. It's actually the deal that's faced in front of you on a cash on cash basis. That's personally how I view them. Then from there, we look at deal structure. And then from there, we talk about profit splitting and everything else, right? But if that deal doesn't work, why are you wasting your time on it? And Jay, I know where you were going. I didn't mean to cut you off, but you can't get to any of those other topics without knowing that it's an inherently good deal. And I think a lot of people glaze over that. They're like, oh, I'm going to go partner up with my boy, and I'm going to go do this, and I'm going to go do that. Well, no, you're not. If you don't have a legit deal, nothing else matters behind it.
And they don't have and by stating that, you don't necessarily have a legit game plan or a well thought out game plan. You know, you could have never done a deal before and you want to be a real estate investor, and you got to figure out why you want to be a real estate investor. Why do you want to be think backwards, right? Why do you want to be a real estate investor? What do you want to focus on as a real estate investor? Do you want to wholesale? Do you want to flip? Do you want to own commercial buildings? Whatever it is. You want to be a private lender. You know, figure out kind of what that is. And I know we use the term deal structure because I think deal structure is the most relevant to all of us. I'm constantly structuring deals. Ian's constantly structuring deals every day. Every single day we're structuring deals. So I think the majority of our brain power and our juices flowing of what we think about every day is related to an individual deal, but it doesn't necessarily need to be. If you're a real estate agent and you have to have a tough conversation with a seller, you know, where are you gonna, how are you gonna have that conversation? Like let's go. We can go through kind of tips and the way that all of our brains think in order to have that tough conversation. You know, if you are a big real estate investor and you have lots of properties and you potentially have a lot of employees and contractors and things like that, well, you might not be thinking about a deal structure every day. You might be thinking about how to manage your employees better or how to cut costs with some contractors or whatever it is, right? There's a lot of different kind of things, but the deal structure is one of the ones that I think is kind of relevant. So let's talk about this, Ian. When you have a new deal that is just underway, and one of the things that we can be fully transparent of what's going on in both of our lives. I mean, Ian's had a pretty busy week with closing some self-storage facilities. He's refinancing a big facility or, a big apartment building. He's closing on a big self-storage facility. Shit happens at the end, right? It's all kind of like, everything kind of skirts around. You have some bumps and then, right before closing, shit happens and you got to stay focused. You got to kind of step yourself back. I mean, I've been through this tons of times. So, we all are there, right? Think about what happens when, you're just closing on your first real estate deal or maybe your 10th real estate deal. It doesn't really matter how many. And like, you're right at the closing table and, you have an issue with the seller, you have an issue with the private lender, whatever the case is. And it's the end of the world, right? It's not the end of the world, but that's how we all feel. It happens so often. So let's talk about ways that what we do, not necessarily how we're reacting to it, but what we do to kind of get out of that situation or potentially not even put ourselves in that situation. Although it's hard not to do that.
I'm probably going to go a completely different way that most people wouldn't think that I would go. And you would think we're going to talk about some bulk real estate, but some of it has to do with psychology. Me and Dan, we were both firemen for quite a while at the fire department, and there for a while, it was very good. We didn't necessarily need the job, and we were able to live life to the fullest because we're like, all right, suspend us. We don't care, right? Like, you got to kind of start to take that same attitude and remain in control. I'm in a relatively sticky deal right now. I got some unrealistic things going on from broker seller side, their attorney. I have some problems on my side of the transaction that I'm working through that I've resolved. They have some problems on their side. But I have my eye on this prize, and this is in real time, right? Like, I'm not even closed yet. I'm literally telling you guys real time of like what's going on with the deal here is that like I'm sitting here fretting over it because I'm like, everything's on the line. I got to do this deal. We both just walked out of the fire department. Like, I got a lot of things riding on this deal. And I got a broker telling me, oh, well, the seller's going to walk. The seller's going to walk. And I'm like, no, dude, your seller's the one with the problems. And we're going back and forth. And so all this stuff, and I keep getting pushed into these unrealistic things. And finally, Dan yesterday or 2 days ago was like, dude, stop. I'm like, what? He's like, think about how we treated the fire department for a while. You can't go in there sweating every little thing. You have to remain in control and say, okay, take the deal. Let it go. Where are they going to go? You got to remember, the broker has a $400,000 fee on the line. Everybody else, and the seller's got a $7 million payday coming to him, right? Like, there's a lot of these things, these other factors that I'm sitting here, all I'm worried about is myself and not really thinking about the deal holistically and saying, wow, how can we all resolve this problem together and take more of a position of a power rather than position of weakness, and just saying, keep laying down to everything and stepping up and saying, you know what, this is going to be a problem. Looks like we can't do this deal. Let's both go our separate ways, and regaining control in the situation. So I think that's something that you can do to salvage a deal towards the end. I don't, or all the way through the deal, is have a good head on your shoulders and know where you're trying to get this transaction to go, because everybody has a common goal here.
And it comes with experience. It comes, small pipeline syndrome. I mean, listen, I lose deals every day, on different sides, deals we're lending on, buying, investing in, whatever it is, and shit happens, and it's part of it, right? You don't want that to happen, but it happens. But if you have a good sized kind of pipeline, leads coming in, real estate investor, a lot of fix and flippers, unfortunately, and wholesalers, it's challenging because they're not doing enough deals that one of them could make a big difference, right? And again, this isn't about like losing deals and like doing more deals. This is about like being in this is more about being in the right mindset and things that you do to kind of work through things. And some things are just out of your control, right? That's just is what it is. But like, you want to, the reason why some of this stuff is not necessarily just based on instinct, and it's based on like thinking through it and being educated. Let's say it's just a one-off seller. I mean, you're doing a massive deal, right? And there's a lot of things. But like, even if you're dealing with a one-off seller and they want to walk because you couldn't get your private funds in place quick enough, like they say they want to walk. Oh, hey, I'm out. I can sell it for higher. Like, those are all potentially correct reasons. But like, as long as there's a win-win situation on the front end, everyone wants to close the deal. It is. Well, these deals close, early on in our career, when, we didn't have a well built out machine, we were like, what's going to happen? We were uncertain, right? Because we hadn't been through enough, but like pretty much all these deals end up closing.
Yeah. Well, and here's a good one. And it's maybe a little different in commercial and residential, but let's say you're in a sticky situation like I am. I need to buy one more week. Something you can do is release the deposit. In the grand scheme of things, my deposit just happens to be $50,000, and I got to put up another $100,000 to do this deal. But I released the deposit to the seller, knowing that I'm going to close. It's really just a process issue. I don't care, right? Like, if I don't perform, I'm losing the $50,000. If I'm going to perform, the money's being applied anyway. It's not the end of the world, right? So think about it in scale, and everything's in relationship too. But if you got a small deal and you're working with you're trying to wholesale something and you only got $1,000 deposit or a $10 deposit or whatever the stupid nominal amount of money is, work through those things. You have stuff inside of your contract, and that's where understanding your contract and what you've ratified and what you're selling to somebody or what you've agreed to sign with. Understand where there's rooms for negotiation down the road. Understand where there's outs for you. Understand what your how you're going to remain in control of this deal all the way through the process. And when you start to feel like you're out of control, you always have the backstop of the contract to utilize it in your favor or in favor of the seller or buyer or whatever side of it you are on, to get everybody back to this happy medium. Actually, as I'm talking about this, it's kind of like, if anybody's watched Jordan Belfort's straight line persuasion sales technique, right? Like, he has this line and you're either above the line or below the line. If you're above the line, you're winning. If you're below the line, you're losing. Well, it's the same thing here. If you're above the line or below the line, you're either in control or out of control. You want everybody to be right on this line and get to the end. And that's what you want to do. And, again, by understanding your contract, that goes a long way. Something else you can do to salvage deals. Got a lot of action outside. You retire from the fire department, all you hear is fire sirens now. Yeah, so that was one thing that we did to get an extension for us was releasing the deposit. And another thing that we were able to do to gain an extension is that technically, again, knowing your contract, there was a legit title issue and enforcing the contract to say, look, there's a legit title issue. This is going to carry another 10 days. Again, make sure you're putting these bullet points. It might seem like nominal stuff to you. Oh, I don't need that. Let me just wipe it out. Let me make it real simple for the buyer and seller. But if you do any sort of deal that has a little bit of hair on it, you want to have a bulletproof contract in place.
All right, let's talk about the fun stuff. The fun stuff in this particular deal. So we're working backwards on it. I'd like to, I'm curious to know how you brainstorm structuring the deal at the beginning, but let's talk about your current situation. Like when you're in full freak out mode, the deal's going bad, like what did you do to get back on track? I understand what Dan said about what's the worst case scenario. Like what did you do? Did you take a walk? Did you drive? Did you go to the gym? Like what are things that you did to get your head cleared and say, you know what? I don't have anything else in my mind right now except figuring out a way that I'm going to solve this current issue, because it turns into a big issue, right? A lot of times they're minor issues and they work themselves out, but it was a big issue that got worked out. Like, how did you do it? How did you clear your mind? What did you focus on? Like, how did you get in the mindset of like, cool, this is going to be my game plan, and I'm going to go through some ideas, my different angles, what the potential outcomes are going to be. How could I rebut the seller or the broker if like, they come back at me?
Well, I would say one of the things that I realized I had going on was, every time I said something, I thought the broker was acting in good faith, right? And some stuff was getting transpired that was a conversation between me and him, and that was being transpired to the seller to ultimately cause more drama, to go to his attorney that went to my attorney that ultimately came back to me, and it was whispered down the lane. So you know what I did? I stopped talking. Like it sounds dumb. It doesn't seem right, but I stopped releasing pertinent information. And I said to my lawyer, I said, hey man, we need to resolve this issue immediately. What do we do here? And he said, good, don't say anything else. And we're going to have conference calls and everybody's going to be on the call. So we are all on the same page. And I said, well, that makes a lot of sense. So stop playing whisper down the lane. Number two, coming in and focusing on what the inherent issues are. I have an inherent title issue. I can't control that. But what I can do is start to study up and understand what the issue is and be able to work through that. Another thing I had was the lender just doesn't seem to want to care about my date, and applying the proper pressure to my lender to say, this is the stop hard date. What's a realistic time frame? Putting everything back into real times and stop saying, okay, well, yeah, we'll be Good Friday because he said he's Good Friday. No, lender, what is it? Okay, you said you're Good Friday. All right, I'm building a 5-day buffer past that day just so I'm super safe. Does the seller like to hear that? No. Am I willing to put more deposit money up for that? Absolutely, because I know this thing's closing and we're properly capitalized to do this deal. So I'm willing to take that extra step. Yeah, look, some of it is the seller's issue with the title problem, and the lender wouldn't move forward until it was resolved. But now that that's all done, I can work through this situation. And again, just taking the time to be real about it. It's not the end of the world. Yes, there's money at risk here, but in the end, it's not the end of the world. It's going to work out. This guy wants to sell it as much as we want to buy it. And yes, the market is insanely hot right now. And sure, he could go sell it. But you know what else I do have on my side? And something everyone should pay attention to is that if we walk today, that's November 1st, the likelihood of anyone closing before 2022 is slim to none. So luckily for me and time constraints, I know I kind of have an additional negotiating power not to make this man have to go through 2022 and ultimately buy some more time. But in the end, honestly, sometimes like today, I came in, I did everything else that has to be done for this deal and haven't engaged the broker until about an hour ago to say, hey, this is where we stand right now. and have gotten all my bullet points in order. So I have the proper ammo to go back and say, hey, man, this is what I got going on. This is where we stand today. I'll follow up before the end of the day and go from there. And really just slowing down the release of information, keeping him up to date to where he needs to be, but also being realistic in our timelines.
When a lot of stuff came down and you weren't sure how to handle it, right? Like after you kind of came up with a clear action plan, it was easier, right? And the one part Ian didn't say, but which is probably the highlight of all this, is transparency and communication. Those are the two things that have to happen. You can't hide and disappear and not communicate with somebody, right? Like that's the worst thing you can do.
Right. Well, I don't want people to take that as a misconception that I just went into shutdown mode and the guy couldn't find me. That'd be the worst thing I could do. But being real about what's going on with the situation and releasing the right information. Look, when I talk to Jason, I'm giving him every little nitty bitty gritty of the deal, right? And this broker's acting like my friend because he wants me to buy the deal, and he's getting paid on it. So, I start getting real friendly with the guy. I'm probably releasing too much information. Release the information that he needs that is pertinent to the deal, that is not going to cause the additional drama.
So what was the first thing you did to think through all this after you dropped the F-bomb 10 times? So let's say you found out some of this shit was going down, right? Perfect. We're going to get
What was the first thing I did?
Yeah,
I was already self-reflecting. I've been writing down notes for the next deal of things that I want to change for the next deal that we're going to do.
Excellent.
Right?
Excellent.
They're right here. And when I literally told the broker, I said, learning lesson. I got some vendor issues. I got some other things that are going on. Boom, right here. I already got a list of notes that I need to do that need to come out quicker. They need to be done earlier in the process. And look, we've done several commercial deals. Just this one just seems to, everything that could be exposed has been exposed of weakness here, weakness there. And maybe it's because I feel like it's a bigger deal than it normally is. That
shit happens. That's what it is. Things happen. There's lots of moving pieces. There's a dozen other parties that are involved in transactions. That's just what it is, right? The difference is, on some of these things is, some of the times you got to babysit deals. Sometimes they just kind of work themselves out. It just depends on the situation.
Well, I would ask you is okay, we're doing a $12 million deal here. It's the largest deal we've done to date. Largest capital raise we've done to date. I mean, you got to go back and remember, when you first started out, Jay, you were doing whatever, $100,000-$200,000 loans. Boom, someone hits you with $1 million loan.
Same thing.
You start to elevate you're sensitive to everything all of a sudden. So, this is the one. Here I am. And things start to compound. How'd you handle it? When things like that. Do you have a story case?
I mean, I got lots of different case studies on lots of different things. It's all kind of the same thing. Is like I know what happened. I know exactly what you went through, and I'm guessing that so you hung up let's just say it was a phone call that triggered it. I don't know what triggers this, but you hung up, you dropped the F-bomb, you went to cry to your partner Dan and be like, I don't know what to do, blah blah blah, blah, right? And then you went after that was. I'll tell you the story because I've done this so many, this happens to all of us, right? Right. After that, you're like, oh shit, I need to self-reflect. You probably went and drank coffee or did something. I don't know what you did, but you and then you went to self-reflect. You're like, okay, I got to think about this. And you couldn't do anything else. If somebody called you and was like, hey, what's up with this other deal? I'll be like, I don't know. I don't care. That's we'll figure that out later. Nothing else was important besides this. And it's different people have different things. It could be taking a walk. It could be taking a drive. It could be doing yoga. It could be lifting. Partially to forget, partially to just to not think about it right then, or partially to think through things. I like to do things to think through things and think through all the angles, right? So be like, all right, well, maybe this, you're pacing around your freaking office because you don't know. You can't sit still. You're not sure. It's just like anything else that happens emotionally. You gotta sit back and move out of it for a little bit.
Well,
and
so it was me and the broker were almost at each other's necks the other day, right? Because he feels some kind of way, I feel some kind of way, and I said to him, do you want to be on the bomb squad or do you want to be a fireman, right? We're all here to put the fires out. Let's get it resolved. I said, hey man. So the next day I talked to him. I was like, yo, I got Zen music on. I'm feeling calm as shit. I'm doing good. He's like, I got Alice in Chains on. I'm like, well, no shit. No wonder why you're like heightened and going hard all the time. And I'm over here, I'm just trying to zen. Dude, I've literally had calming music on, just nice and level headed, just, nice and easy. I've been, my ride to and from the office is about an hour, just being quiet, not listening to stuff to get me all hyped up. Part of the problem is I put Instagram and Facebook back on my phone. So I think I've been getting sucked into that. It's really been taking away some mental headspace that is not needed right now. So taking the time to prioritize.
Yeah, but when you're driving though right now, instead of listening, because you probably can't stay focused on a podcast and a book, because that's what happens. No. This is all you're focused on, which is good. This is like we don't need to go to college for this shit. Like, we're real life examples. Like, psychologically, I know what happens because I'm still doing it. And again, this particular case study is what's a good way to explain it? Like this is one example of 100 different things that could happen. And this example is just like, hey, it's a deal that has a speed bump or a minor issue that has to be overcome. But like this exact same thing happens when, let's just say, like, a wholesaler or a seller calls you and you're a newer wholesaler, or a newer real estate investor, and a seller calls you and you potentially can make $50,000 on a wholesale fee. Really, like a real life example that's happened to everybody. Not everybody, but it happens. You've been in the game long enough, and you first are like, this is too good to be true. This is a home run. Blah blah blah. It's the same process. You freak out for a little bit in a positive way. You go tell your business partner of like, holy shit, we can make $50,000 on this deal. Then you're like, you can't think about anything else because that's the only thing that you're focused on, right? It's the same freaking process. It's this, you get obsessed about this situation. It could be, you had the epitome or that aha moment that you need to hire a new employee. It's the same thing, right? You're obsessed with it. It's like, well, if we hire this new employee, they could do our bookkeeping, they could do this. I don't have to do this. We don't have to do that. Like, it could be like, oh, hey, I just had this great meeting with this private capital investor. He said he'd put up $1 million into our deal. Imagine what that could do for us, right? Like, it's the same freaking process. Like, and if you recognize that it's the same process and you understand how to deal with it, and it's all positive things, right? Like, even Ian's situation is a positive thing, right? Like, if you figure out how to deal with it instead of just like freaking out the wrong way, right? On Ian's deal, he could just go freaking crazy on everybody, and that's not going to accomplish anything. Or let's say, it's a $50,000 wholesale fee, and all of a sudden, like, you don't take it seriously and you don't think through it all and you don't do your proper diligence. That's going to be a nightmare too, right? Like, it's all the same things. Like, where, like, I'm guessing because you drive a lot, is driving where, like, and you know when these thoughts happen, because you can't stay focused on a podcast, you can't stay focused on a book, you can't stay focused talking to somebody else on the phone. You're blacked out, literally blacked out, and obsessed about it. I have these conversations, and this happens to me every day, typically every day.
Everyone goes through it. You need to realize where you're at. I'm not a big journaler. I've tried meditating. Right now I'm just like, all right, take a deep breath. Am I doing, classic meditation? No. But in the same sense, like, if you're not learning from the exact situation you're in, you're going to keep having these dumpster fires over and over and over again, right? Like, you got.
It's not a dumpster, but it's not necessarily a dumpster fire. In your case, potentially it's a dumpster fire.
Right now, it's not a dumpster fire. But if I let this happen again, over and over and over and over again, well, now that's an inherent issue. What I'm trying to say is, yes, I have. If you looked at me, I just gave everyone a clear picture of my life, they're probably like, oh my God, Ian's a shit show. What the hell is going on? No, man, this is the best learning experience I could have to say, if I could tackle this deal and I got through this crap and I've learned from it and put processes in place, like, I could tell you right now, the number one thing is to go back and add certain provisions to the contract regarding title and proper extensions that allow this to be worked through. And I had this originally reviewed by a lawyer. I'm going back and adding another round of information in there to update it specifically pertinent. And we did this with our leases when we were coming, when we started, renting houses. It was the same thing. It was like, same problem over again. That's it. Put it in the lease. I don't care. Get a lawyer to review it. Put it in the lease. All right. Hey, we got this problem. Tenant, review your lease. You're responsible for the lockout. You're responsible for the water damage. You're responsible for the first number of dollars of repairs. Don't call us. that alleviates a lot of pains, and it goes a long way. And then you stop this situation. And in the end, if you don't learn from what you're doing, whether the deal goes right, wrong, or indifferent, in the end, you need to take the time and reflect on the deal that you just done.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the case with everything. Like, that's how, I don't know, man.
Yeah, but real estate's like one of those businesses though, that like people can literally just keep like tossing, well, I wasn't hurt, but
no,
you can
doesn't.
toss
It don't, dude, it only goes so far. It only goes so far.
Yeah.
Right. It does. Like, it's got to be treated. It's got to, if you're not obsessing about your deals, if you're not obsessing about marketing campaigns, if you're not obsessing and acting on all of this stuff, it like part of your obsession right now wasn't necessarily to be pissed off at the situation or have to make uncomfortable phone calls. It was about, I'm obsessing on what to do, like you just said, what to do in the next one so I don't run into this problem. I mean, I'll give you a good example because, I like the whole mindset of like, can't stay focused on other stuff because you have one thing on your mind, and I told you this, so maybe like a week ago, and I used to do yoga like once a week or a few times a week. And I don't do it anymore. I'd like to again, but anyways, and I used to be able to part of the process was I would be able to think. It was like yoga / meditation. And part of the process was I could like think / dream about these things. And like, it would be in the middle of the day. So like maybe had an uncomfortable deal, had to have an uncomfortable conversation, whatever it is. Most of them are little, right? It's, we all sweat the little things, right? But it could be like, hey, I got this borrower that reached out to me and like, I know there's a deal there, but I can't figure out what to do, like how to structure it, what I want the loan amount to be, but whatever the case is, right? And it was a good mental place, twice a week, whatever it was. It was a good mental place. All I had to do was lay down on the mat, and that's all I was focused on thinking of. It was easy. Like, I was looking forward to it. Like, I wasn't in the right headspace anywhere else to do it except then. And I'm like, or how am I going to have this conversation with this? How are we going to structure this? How are we going to do this? So like, I walk pretty much every day now and read books, and like typically, or podcasts, or listen to books. And typically I know where I am and what I'm thinking about, if I can stay focused on it or not. And 90+% of the time, I'm very focused on it. But, we were, when the two of us were structuring this other deal that you were working together, that we're kind of partnering on, as soon as it kind of came into fruition and like I knew what the numbers looked like, I couldn't obsess about it. I didn't know what they were. But after I had that, I knew the numbers in the back of my head. I'm walking, obsessing about it, like, okay, should we structure it like this? Should we structure it like this? Like, does this benefit Ian? Does this benefit our team? If we bring private investors in, how is that going to work? What's the outcome of this? What's the outcome of that? Like, I literally obsessed on it. I knew, and I mean, here and there, I'd open up my phone and I'd be like, oh wait, let me look at what the projected dollar figure is on this, right? And then I'd use that. Okay, so based on that calculation, it's gonna be like this. Like, I knew it. Like, tell me anything about that deal, I know it without even looking at it because I obsessed about it. That's what it was, and I understood that. Hey, walking's a place I can focus on things. I'll have a clear mind. I know what's up. So like 45 minutes later, I get home and I'm not done. Like, I don't remember walking, right? Because that's what happens. Yep. Just like you drive to your office and you don't even remember driving. Like, oh shit, I already passed that exit. I'm almost here. And that's how things work. Like, that's how this works every day. Sometimes an extreme example, like your situation and my situation. Sometimes little situations of like, you know what, Mr. So-and-so, I think we have something there. I'm not 100% sure. Let me wrap my brain around it real quick and I'll call you back in a second, right? Hey, get off the phone. If you're in a good mindset right now, let me think through this. There's this. Okay. And once if he says this, once he says that, like, that's how it works. Like, this is everyday stuff.
How many times a day? Well, I don't say how many times a day. I say more like how many times a week I have like a brainstorm idea, or you have a brainstorm idea. And like, we've tried calling each other and it just hasn't gone anywhere. And then there's other times where we'll just shoot each other like, yo, what kind of headspace are you in right now? And you'll be like, yo, I'm grinding. I nothing creative. What do you got? And I'm like, okay, well, I got something creative. Forget it. Or other times like, yo, creative mindset. Let's do this. And I'm like, let's fucking go. Yeah. And it's, It's some of the best conversations.
But that's magic. That's
Yeah.
creative magic. And I don't think I'm a creative person. But like that's what it is. It's magic, and that
when everyone's
happens.
in the right. Yeah, and when everyone's in the right mindset, it goes a long way. And sometimes that's some of the problems here is that you're so emotional in the situation you can't even resolve the problem if you want, because in the end, the statement "cooler heads prevail." Get a phone call this morning. Hey man, I've calmed down a lot. I'm ready to talk about what we need to talk about. This is my understanding of this situation. And I told him, I said, yep, I'm not going to comment until I speak to my lawyer, and we'll go from there, and I'll follow up with you at the end of the day. And that's where we stand. So,
yeah. And too many people, they either are a hothead about it or they have something to think through and they just don't ever think through it. And then that doesn't get done. The money you can make if you can creatively work through some of these things. And the reason I think we called this podcast, we're going to wrap it up because we've been freaking going at it, which is fine. But I think the reason we focused more on like the deal structures, because I think a lot of people don't know how to structure deals. Well, you know how to structure a deal? You freaking sit down and you think through it. And you think as a win-win situation. Like, what's a win-win situation for all parties? Right? Like, these sellers want to close, right? For you, Ian. These sellers want to close. You want to close. It's the same outcome, right? They hear it from you. It's like, listen, I'm doing whatever I can. It's not like I'm trying to, weasel out of this deal. I want this freaking deal. I'm willing to put more money into it as a down payment. Like that, or not as a down payment, as earnest money deposit. And, it goes hard now. So you get some of the funds. Like, when you get into that level, and typically you don't do that kind of on the emotional, like everyone's pissed off level, but after you calm down and then you have like the follow-up call when they're calmed down as well, like that's really when the magic happens. Like that's when the true transparency, honest, like look into your freaking soul stuff occurs.
Hey, sometimes you just got to sit there and listen. I do
that's painful.
Yeah, no, I do a pretty good job of taking a beating sometimes, but you have to, man. You can't always get your point across. Sometimes you got to know your audience. If the other guy's going at it hard, you just sit there and listen and say, okay, man, I'll catch up with you in a little bit. Let me process everything we discussed. Because if you say anything, you're going to set the guy over the edge or the gal over the edge.
Yeah, no matter what it is. Yeah, no matter what it is.
So
I don't know, man. I think this was an awesome topic. We didn't get a lot of feedback on any of the chat on comments and the chat. So if you're rewatching this on social, rewatch it, man. Or if you got some value out of this, share with one of your friends. They don't have to be a real estate investor. If you're listening to this on our podcast, Real Estate Reserve podcast, and you enjoyed this and you got some value from this, give us a 5-star review. Feel free to share it, comment, like. This is passionate for me, Ian. Like, I love this conversation personally. And
I'm an open book. Most people can ask me anything. I'll tell you the ins and outs. And, we try not to hide anything and talk about real deals in real time. And literally we're actively working through this deal. And once it closes out, we can do a big case study on this deal and the other deal that me and Jason are structuring and, continue the conversation. But again, if you're not, maybe we don't have a lot of comments because a lot of people are hopefully self-reflecting on some stuff that they have going on in their business that they can fix today and structure their deals better overall.
Dude, whenever those moments happen, it could be an aha moment. It could be, oh shit, like I got a real challenge I need to figure out. Understand who you are and where you can do your best thing and go to that place. A lot of people, high-end business owners and CEOs and athletes have those pods in their houses, which are amazing. And like, that's where their spot is. They go down there and they reflect, they do their thing, go for a walk, go sit in your office, whatever the case is. So, all right, guys, we'll chat with you guys next week.
Me and Dan were discussing which monsters we're drinking, and I've had them out of my life for a long time, and Daniel started drinking them again, and he got me the orange ones because he knows I'm a goddamn sucker. So, but either, yeah,
go rage and go scream at the broker.
Well, maybe I should stop drinking them. I calm down. So, all right, we'll catch you guys here shortly.
Thanks for tuning in to the Real Estate Reserve podcast. Do us a favor and like, comment, and share our broadcast. It helps the algorithm and helps us spread the word too. Till next time, thank you for tuning in.